thanks also, besides Mark and David, to Congressman Levin, who always shows up at our annual fundraiser in Martha's Vineyard. We thank you very much for that as well. And I want to thank all of you. You know, we had a tough race for governor last year. If it hadn't been for the people in this room, Jennifer Granholm would not have gotten reelected. We thank you for standing up to the far right, who put up a gazillionaire candidate the last time, and you beat him with shoe leather. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for re-electing Debbie Stabenow, which started to look like a tough race until you helped her pull away. And thank you so much for making Harry Reid Senate Majority Leader so that he could make Carl Levin Chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I do have a special place in my heart for both Congressman Levin and David for having been county chair. So I just thought, before I get into my remarks, to talk a little bit about how I got to be county chair. I first got into politics in 1976. I liked Jimmy Carter in 1976, but I was in medical school, so I couldn't do any political work. But in 1980, I was finishing my residency in Vermont, and he was running for re-election. So I decided I'd work in his campaign what time I had. And it turned out that it was a state senator from down the street who was chairing the campaign. So I licked envelopes and, you know, wrote handwritten letters. We didn't have computers in those days. And worked in Carter's campaign. And eventually I ended up being a delegate to the National Convention, which is an elected type of thing, because I worked pretty hard. And those days I was still a bit of a partier, as some Democrats are known to be. So we all went to New York. And I was, of course, a very loyal Carter delegate, but all the people my age, the people who brought me into politics, were older. They were what we would call ethnic Democrats, mostly French, Italian, Irish Catholics who made up the backbone of the Democratic Party in Vermont. And they were a generation older than I. The people who were with my age were for Ted Kennedy, who was running against Jimmy Carter in the primary. So I voted all day with the Carter people and drank all night with the Kennedy people. And when I got back to Vermont after the convention, the state chairman called me in, and our county chair was very ill, and he said, "I want you to be the new county chair when Carol resigns, because she's very ill." And I said, "I can't do that. I only lived in the state for 2 years. I don't hardly know anybody." He said, "You know, I know you don't hardly have lived here very long, but you're the only person I can find, and I don't understand why it is that you can get along with both the Kennedy people and the Carter people." So that's how I became the state chair and the county chair, and it was a great job, and we got organized and we began to win. Just so you know something about Vermont, I know it has a reputation of being the People's Republic of Vermont, thanks to Dick Cheney and others who talk about it, but the fact is Vermont did not have a Democratic governor for 109 consecutive years between 1859 1853 and 1962, 109 consecutive years without a Democrat in the governor's office. Remember the saying, as goes Maine, so goes Vermont? Vermont and Maine, the only two states in 1936 that did not vote for the re-election of President Roosevelt. So it's been a long, tough haul, and we did rebuild the Democratic Party. But it's still, in governor, we actually have a Republican governor right now, so it's been a tough haul. But I just want to talk for a minute about some of the things that we have to do, and I want to set the stage by just reading a quote to you from the New York Times, which I had somebody, a wonderful Democrat, pass along to me earlier in the day. This is a quote from the Vice President of the United States. "Mr. Cheney took issue with criticism of the state of the economy from Democratic presidential candidates. He said, quote, 'The suggestion that somehow it's hard times out there, I just think is a misstatement.'" When was the last time Dick Cheney was in Michigan? When was the last time these guys had any understanding of what it was like for ordinary people to actually make a living and try to raise kids in an economy where the president's policy is to send jobs elsewhere? We need somebody who understands ordinary Americans as the next president of the United States, and that person is not a Republican. We will have a fight on our hands. I frequently say the Republicans have no idea how to run the country, but they do know how to win elections. And mark my words, my biggest fear in this election is complacency. Is the idea, oh, we're going to win. The Republicans have screwed it up and we're going to win. The Republicans have screwed it up, I'll agree with that. There is no guarantee that we're going to win the next election unless we go out and work. And let me tell you what kind of work that is. The truth is that we have not campaigned in about half the states of this country for over 30 years, until the last election. Even in Michigan and in Ohio, in places that we need to win, sometimes we don't go into the most rural parts of the states where we're afraid that we can't win. Well, I'll tell you something. We may not win in the rural parts of the states, but if we've gone into the rural parts of Ohio and gone from 25% Democratic performance to 35%, we would have John Kerry in the White House right now. Boy, wouldn't that be an improvement over what we've got? We need to be everywhere. How many counties in the state of Michigan? 83. It's not just a 50-state strategy, it's an 83-county strategy. There's not one county. Every single American is a potential Democratic vote, and even if they don't vote for us, we need to ask them, because asking for their vote is a sign of respect. And we have gone too long in this ugly 15-year Republican or interregnum without showing respect to all Americans, whether we agree with them or not. So I need your help. And America needs your help. In those areas of both Michigan and of the country where we haven't been for 30 years, where we haven't gone because we were afraid we can't win, the Democratic message has been covered and carried by such great luminaries as Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh and Michael Savage and Bill O'Reilly. There is only one way to counteract hate radio and hate television. And let's not call it talk radio, because that's not what it is. It's hate radio. And the best way to get rid of it is to reinstate the fairness doctrine. The only way short of that is to counter hate radio is to show yourself at the door. The fact of the matter is, there is something, we did a lot of work on this. I just make no bones about it. We copied a lot of the strategy of the Republican National Committee. In Virginia, in this last election, we put in $5 million simply so we could experiment with different ways to get the vote out and to elect Tim Kaine, which happened. We now know that the best way you can get the vote out is not robocalls, it's not television ads, it's not direct mail, it's knocking on doors. And the best way to knock on doors is not to have you knock on doors with 3 weeks to go and have an army of wonderful college kids, wonderful as they are, is to have someone you know, and we're going to start this November 3rd, which is next week, we're going to start asking every one of you to knock on 25 doors of people that you know or that are in your neighborhood, and asking you to knock on those same 25 doors 2 or 3 times more in the next year, so you develop a relationship with these folks. And the first knock is not about asking for their vote. It's about letting them know that you're proud to be a Democrat and that you would like to know what they're worried about and what they think the right solution is. We need to develop a relationship with folks, because neighbor to neighbor always beats ugly television negative advertising. And that's what we have to do, is go back to the old days where we knocked on everybody's door and recreate the American Democratic family. And then after you're willing to sign up to do just 25 doors, that's all we ask, we need you to find 2 other people who will do the same thing. We intend to have a couple of 100,000 people doing it all over the country. And I must say, it's bad form to come and talk about another state's excellent program, but I was in Oregon last week. Oregon's already decided they're going to ask people to knock on 50 doors instead of 25, 4 times instead of 3 times, and they're going to ask people to find 3 other people instead of 2 to get it done. So, should we start a friendly competition here, Mark? But this stuff makes a big difference. You know, Joe Nolenberg supported the president on all the war. He supported the veto of the S-chip program, and you can have a different congressperson, because you almost had one last time, if you knock on every single door in his district, and you will. Joe Nolenberg voted last week to cut 118,500 Michigan children off their health insurance. We deserve better, and we can have better if you knock on 25 doors 3 times in the next year. Now,